Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. With all the drama emerging around the Rokkr home series over the past few days, Dylan Envoy of the Los Angeles Thieves has suggested, what about we go back to an entirely LAN league environment? No more online matches, let's make it happen in Dallas, Texas, somewhere or another, so that all the qualifier games going forwards happen on LAN. This could be doable, it's definitely possible if the league wants to comply, but what do we want? Do we want it to favour the league? Do we want it to favour the teams? Or are the fans at the primary level of importance? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to discuss. Firstly, just wanted to say this came out a few days ago that I know I've been seeing over the past few days the all-time highs almost every single day for CSGO at the moment. There's a lot of hype around CS2, but also CSGO being a 10-plus-year-old game and still a phenomenal one. It's hitting all-time highs. It's pretty remarkable to think about. But Warzone and Modern Warfare 2 is in the mud more than it's really ever been. The all-time peak's really here for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone back in, I guess, when the game came out in November. You're talking 500,000 all-time peak concurrents, and in the last few, I mean, this was a few days ago now, but still 80,000. I remember even back in the Black Ops 2 days, you used to go on and see, you know, easily 150,000 in the kind of good old days, and this is including Warzone as well today. So, yeah, for the first time since launch, Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 are in the mud. I don't really follow much of the Warzone stuff. I know that there's been a lot of frustration around the way that game has gone, and maybe just battle royales in general aren't quite as appealing as they were a couple of years ago. It's probably a natural cycle in some regards, but certainly Activision and Infinity Ward will have to take note that their game has fallen off massively, and you know, hopefully they might consider changes, or at least Activision will allow Treyarch to do what they want, which is hopefully what they're going to do. So next year, again, for the CDL, we're probably going to be playing Modern Warfare 2. The rumour has it there's going to be an extension map pack type thing that either Cellium Games are working on that are going to drop as what they consider to be a full premium release, i.e. you've got to pay another $70 for it, $60, whatever they charge nowadays, even though it's basically just the same game with a few new maps from back in the day. We'll see what they decide to do. But 2024's Call of Duty is actually a new CoD, and hopefully we get 2 years of this. So this is going to be Treyarch's game, a sequel to the Cold War game set in the Gulf War. So this is according to Modern Warfare 2 Informer. I don't know how reliable these sources are, but I thought just looking at this stuff, it seems more legitimate than it could have done. Another of the stuff here really seems outrageous. So multiplayer planned to be 6v6. This is, I thought, was the most exciting one though. The time to kill is similar to Black Ops 4. Now that is a really interesting observation if that is true, because Black Ops 4 had the longest time to kill I think we've ever seen in Call of Duty, really. You had 150 health for pretty much the first time. The guns didn't kill fast. The real thing that kind of slowed down the TTK in that game though was the stim shots, right? That you could heal well, you had to heal yourself in order to regenerate health. So you know, you had to slam the stim shot in, and because that was allowed, you could get tagged up, go behind a wall, get back to 150 health very quickly. It took ages to kill anyone. Now, you know, I actually think that the stim shot was probably one of the things I thought was most frustrating with that game, and if it was a normal game in terms of healing mechanics, I think it would have been, I love Black Ops 4, but I think it might have been even better than it already was. So assuming this new game here in the Gulf War or whatever, Black Ops Gulf War, I suppose, that is going to be a Black Ops 4 level time to kill, like just anything Cold War-esque, or, you know, anything around that number in terms of time to kill, we have got to hit 4 to 5 shots to get the job done. Like, that's what you want to get, you know what I mean? Like, that really does elevate the skill gap. What I see when I watch Modern Warfare 2 be played of people just incinerating them in barely any bullets is just crazy how quick you die. And according to this leak, at least, Treyarch do still have that good idea to have a slightly longer Treyarch-esque time to kill. Now, sliding is in the game. That's not really a massive surprise. And then also, tac sprint might be here as well, but it's very short. So, interesting one. I don't know. We never really know what's happening behind the scenes because Treyarch haven't really done tac sprint before. It's just been sprint or run, or, you know, sprint or walk, or whatever you want to consider it as. So adding tactical sprint into the game, it's usually like an Infinity Ward thing. Maybe it's something that because people like it in Warzone, that maybe Activision like, hey Treyarch, you've got to put this in, but Treyarch are like, okay, we're gonna maybe have it, but it's only gonna last like 1 second. So, you know, I don't know, I guess stay tuned. But I thought from the early news of what next year's CoD might be, this is just some promising signs, because hopefully it is going to be around for 2 years, just as this game it seems to be. A couple of quick comments from the breakdown last night as well. They put together their team of the week. Stanley from the series they played against Boston. It's always tricky in a way, because if you just played one series like Stanley did, he fried on that series, don't get me wrong, and I think it's deserving to be on the team of the week. But when you play 2 series, it gives it a bit more credence. Envoy as well played great for Thieves. Beans as well on that Boston team despite losing to Vegas. Bounced back very well against Toronto. And then FaZe team right on that result that he had on the Minnesota Rokkr side. So I think this is a pretty justified team of the week. But of course, if Stanley's getting team of the week, then you might think that maybe Dashy should get team of the week just because this guy had a 1.8 in his series that he played. So I don't know. I thought it was nice though. And they brought Stanley on as well to discuss things with them during the course of the show. There was also some talk about CTF versus Control. I know this is always a talking point, and there's been some rumors that like CTF is in the game files now and it's potentially going to come into the title. I don't know. I don't mind Control personally. I appreciate that it probably was at its best in Black Ops 4 when it was first introduced, when it was 5v5, when the maps and the spawns seemed to make more sense, and also with specialists in play in that game, they were, there was more interesting things that could happen in Control than there currently is. So, there's some advantages to capture the flag, but personally, I'm kind of in favor of keeping Control for the time being, unless all the teams and the fans seem to change their mind and disagree, or whether another possibility comes along. Uplink is always fun, but not really going to be working for boots on the ground unless they find a valuable alternative, which they could, but potentially aren't too interested in doing. So Vegas the other day, after fighting for this spot for the World Championship, have been pegged back somewhat, not by their own poor performances, but by the other teams around them getting the wins. Boston got a win, Seattle Surge got a win, and also Minnesota Rokkr in their home series they played got another 20 points on the board by taking down the Florida Mutineers and the Los Angeles Guerrillas, two teams that aren't especially impressive at the moment. And we saw the other day there was some drama about this, and Brett Diamond went on the flank. I thought it was really great to hear his conversation about what he thought about how they were able to execute this event and what their plans are going forward in terms of proving this model of having some of these matches be played on LAN in front of a crowd can work and be effective, and also is much more cost effective for the teams than to put on an entire major which lasts 4 days and cost, he said, in excess of $1 million. But putting on one of these events is going to cost maybe a fifth or a sixth of that, and is definitely achievable for most teams, if not every team in the league, to do at least once per year to allow this to occur. So I thought it was really cool to see that they've proved to an extent that this model is viable, and they're going to do it again in about a month or so's time. But getting the players on board is going to be a question mark here. The players in general want to play on LAN. I'm sure they want to play on LAN, they want to play in front of fans, but the idea for Clayster that Rokkr got to play matches in front of their home crowds and gave them, an advantage as such, was disappointing for Clay, especially in his fight for the World Championship with those guys. And you can understand it from Clay's PFE, but I'm generally in favor of trying to make what Brett Diamond and co made happen more often, because it's straight up better for the scene, it's better for the fans, and it's better for the organizations. They can activate with their fans, they can generate revenue from stuff like this, and the guys in person seem to be having a great time, and they've got an actual one in Minnesota themselves coming up relatively shortly. So they're about 1,000 fans in the venue. Thought it was really great stuff that they were able to execute this, and they've got another one coming up soon. So this, again, 2 matches for the Minnesota Rokkr. They get to play on LAN in front of their home crowd. Like, that's a pretty big deal. Brett Diamond also confirmed that they were speaking to the Seattle Surge, and Surge also agreed to do this, but the 2 teams that will end up going to the Palace Theatre in St. Paul, Minnesota is, the Londonville Ravens and the Boston Breach on May the 6th, 2023, coming up for the Major 5 qualifier. So good stuff all around. However, other teams have seen this and think, all right, well, cool, good job, Minnesota, but our organization either doesn't want to do this or isn't funding it, and therefore, and it seemed only like 5 teams out of the 12 agreed to go to Wisconsin and Minnesota, respectively. Surge was the additional one that wasn't included on the matches that they could come up with. But Envoy says, all right, how about we just do them all on LAN anyway and bring back the LAN League? Because, frankly, the pandemic meant that the season, or the entire scene, had to go online. And if the pandemic never happened, we probably don't have any online matches at all. But it's just because after the pandemic ended, it was easier and cheaper for the CDL, and in some respects better, right? Less travel costs, less stress around stuff like that for the players and for the teams to do it online as opposed to LAN. But back in the pre-CDL days, in the CWL, as Envoy is saying, he played in the Black Ops 4 days, they used to go in person on LAN to, usually it was the studios that the MLG guys had in like Columbus, Ohio, to play their LAN qualifiers or their LAN league matches there, and then that would act as seeding for the majors. So it was a different format back then in a way. Like, the matches that were done on LAN were league games as opposed to qualifier games. But what about just bringing back something like that for an actual LAN league to occur? This would be phenomenal if it was to be the case. For imagine the content you would get, that the players were there all the time, all the behind the scenes stuff. But Envoy says, what about at Esports Stadium Arlington? Because the majority of teams are out there in Texas anyway. They're all around that Dallas area. Okay, there are a couple of teams over in LA, Minnesota, arguably want their team to be based in Minnesota if they can. Not every team is out there in Texas, but there was an argument to say that potentially bringing back a LAN league in Texas would be the way to go going forwards, because frankly, the players want to do LAN if they can, especially Thieves playing from LA. It's not ideal from an internet side. There's also all the drama that keeps on going around, and for good reason, around the loudness equalization and stuff. The online setting right now isn't particularly good, so, you know, they want more LAN action. And maybe the current format in general we presently have needed change. You guys remember back in the Cold War days, we used to do groups, Group A, Group B, that the teams would actually select. So, you know, the matches that were played for effectively the qualifiers for the major were fairer in some regard, because the groups were not randomly seeded, but they were seeded by the teams themselves, which meant that you don't get a random selection of qualifiers. So maybe something like that needs to come back as well for the 5 qualifier games. And as well, even Marky B says, how about move everyone to LA like the LCS and do everything on LAN out there like other leagues do? So, you know, I do think eventually we've got to get rid of this online qualifier type stuff. But, you know, the frustration might be for some of the teams, and for good reason, is that let's say this was taking place in Esports Stadium Arlington. What would OpTic think? Because that is their stadium, right? OpTic will have a lease on that stadium, and that's where they hosted Major 3, if you guys aren't aware. And if they're doing the LAN League in Texas there in front of, you know, potentially they'd want to do it in front of a crowd, right? But then if you bring a crowd into Esports Stadium Arlington, then OpTic are going to always have, you know, they're always going to be playing at these LAN games in front of their, you know, home supportive crowds, which is probably an unfair advantage. But at the same time, like, you know, if you've got a game Thieves versus FaZe, people just want to attend and actually watch that, right? So it doesn't make sense. If you're going to do this on LAN, you probably want to allow fans there to attend. But then, of course, all the teams like Minnesota, for example, will want to be able to activate with their home fans, and they can't do so. So I think I actually prefer the idea that Rokkr have come up with here, that these every weekends, some of the matches that are taking place maybe partly online, but part of them will take place on LAN in front of a crowd at a certain team's venue if they can get that organised, which I think is the best way that this could be done if the other teams in question actually want to execute and make that happen and have the willingness to push this forward as the Rokkr do, which I think is very good for the scene in general. So I actually think there's issues to both sides of things, but I certainly would prefer either of these eventualities than staying online for the immediate future. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Is Antarctica north or south?
North.
No.
I don't, dude.
Oh
That
my
was
God.
bad. Go!
Who was the